The Blue Jewel.
Chapter 12. Part 1. Our great Lady Arian kept the promise, performed to our god 5 years later, of recovering the jewel in Tripulia returned on Elaban's triumph at his temple in Turkheimak. Then she spent the night alone watching over the jewel. Arian's life. Salmaron priestess. The following weeks were of recognition for the heroes. They collected all their stipulated fees despite not fulfilling the contract in all its conditions. Ferdinand apologized to them for not having discovered Phedoros' evil intentions and promised the dissolution of the Order of the White Robes forever. All the jewels were given to the Great Council except two, the Triumph of Elaban and the Jewel of Caesarea, both of which belonged to Arian despite the pressures of the Mags who wanted all the jewels for themselves. But in the end they accepted Arian's decision as the council was not in a position to claim. The rest of the jewels would be separated so that they would never be put back together. Despite Ferdinand's promise, the council did not accept the dissolution of the Order of the White Robes. It was too important, and to accept dissolution would be to admit its own corruption. But they did order a reform of the order and the purge of most of its mags. Ferdinand was appointed Grand Master of the White Robes to eliminate the corruption that existed there. They returned to Almera as always. In the wagon travelled the Orcs, Critters, Agnorok and the Kendali at the reins of the horses. Arian rode his faithful Kiona with Aras. Now they were not separated. Gosberg and Kush rode behind Sabu. As always the little Denka played jokes on everyone and was in a good mood. They were all in high spirits and cheerful, except for Agnorok, who was quite reserved except in the brief conversations with Gosberg, Kush or Vanus. He tried to stay away as much as possible, so at dinner time he asked for the first shift on duty, as always. After a month of travel they arrived in Almera. They were received by de Boek with the rest of the company in full. They were entertained with 2 honors, a great triumph, a great reward, more fame, more glory, and as a consequence they would have more jobs and more gold for the company. While the rest celebrated the great victory, Kush delivered the report of the mission to recover Elaban's triumph to de Boek, who as always read it carefully. Who was the Darrick skull? Jumal, Agnorok knows him. He is the personal bodyguard of Raider Arcio. We did not find his corpse. And we do not know the reason for his involvement in this matter either. The veteran mercenary nodded, continued reading the report. De Boek raised his eyebrows. Something didn't add up. Gosberg gave the jewel to Phedoros. That's right, we suspected Phedoros from the beginning. Doing that was sheer madness. De Boek would normally demote any other mercenary, but he continued to read Kush's report carefully. Phedoros was beheaded. I didn't look closely. I was more attentive to the Soul Eater and Arian. I found the corpse later without a head. Gosberg was fighting against it, but he didn't say anything. As de Boek continued to read the other time until he finished the report, signed it with a golden pen and stamped his sealed seal. That meant that everything was in order and that it could be kept in the archive of successfully completed missions by the company. An excellent job, one of the best of this company. Kush did not get up and de Boek stared at an old dagger that was on the table. The magician could not contain his curiosity. Who is Gosberg really? The old warrior opened a drawer and removed from inside a glass cube that he offered to the magician. Un subwa de Dasker. I see you know them. The magician Nermalus, a complete genius of illusions, created them about 1,000 I think. They are very scarce, they are very valuable objects. That's right, they trap images for eternity, they are single-use. If you take it to your eyes and put it in the right position, you will be able to see the image that was recorded in it 50 years ago. Kush, intrigued, began to move the cube while looking through it. He had read something about the cubes, but it was the first time he had one. It was a gift from the grandfather of the current king of Demember. De Boek continued to speak as Kush tried to see the image that was engraved on the cube. Kush finally managed to see the image and he couldn't believe it. It was like being present at that moment 50 years ago, and there he was, Gosberg posing happily with a group of warriors. Next to him was a young man of just about 15 years old. That young man was Dubok. It's him. But how? Kush was amazed. Dubok smiling got up and went to a cupboard where he kept a series of bottles reserved for special occasions. He poured 2 glasses and one he handed to Kush. Before speaking he drank his glass in one gulp. My father and uncle were veterans of the wars of the Plague Decade. They ended up without a king to serve. They went to Almera. But it was a port where aimless warriors found work if they didn't ask too much. It was here in a tavern that he met my mother, a former warrior of the Kingdom of Balduin, who supported the side of the wrong claimant to the throne in the Civil War, but was able to flee. He ended up in Almera as well. The two fell in love, and between adventures I grew up. They left me in a tavern that was located where these barracks are now built. It was called the Blue Phoenix. Those who ran the place took care of me when my parents were away. I was already 10 years old. My blood boiled from going to fight, but I was too young. One summer night he arrived. He had never seen a Denka, or anyone in Almera really. With his haughty air he took a seat and began to play a game of cards with the worst of Almera, the most cheaters. All of them were ruthless murderers. At the end of the night they fought. He was caught cheating like them. It was an unfair fight and my uncle went to help him. My uncle was very fond of fights in taverns and also hated many of those involved. The worst kind of Almera died that night. My uncle was not an easy person to impress and he swore that he had never seen anything like it. Since then he has become a member of the family. My parents and my uncle had multiple adventures with him. Our fame increased deservedly. In the end, when I was 15 years old, I went with them. It was an impossible mission. We had to help a pretender to the throne of Demember to reach the crown and also prevent an invasion of the dwarfs of the Dragon Ridge to the mines of the kingdom. It was the first Iron War. We did it. I was there in those mines. That image captured in the cube is from when we returned with a bag full of gems, bought the Blue Phoenix tavern and turned it into our headquarters. The rest is history. Gosberg is not always here. My parents died, like my uncle. Over the years many other mercenaries have changed companies. Others are retired or dead, but he always comes and goes. He hadn't appeared for 10 years. Personally he thought he had died in one of his crazy adventures, but one day. He arrived with a baby Denka to take care of. Since then he does some mission that interests him and then disappears from time to time, without commenting anything. I was not worried when he accepts a mission despite his methods always ends successfully. He is also the oldest active member of this company, so he is the one who has the highest rank of all. Dubok took a breath, then moved a little closer to the magician and showed him a piece of paper, written in Gosberg's handwriting. The first thing that amazed the magician was the calligraphy, extraordinary. Then there was a list of names on the paper and next to it some very specific locations with a margin of dates. 6 years ago he took a seat in that chair where you are sitting and filled this scroll with the names of a series of promising warriors who it was convenient to hire for the company. The first of them a dwarf exiled from the Brown Hills and who as you can see lived poorly on the western coast of Darkost, the last one more than a year ago, a wandering half-orc who is said to have defeated the king of the vampires. Kush finished the contents of the glass and placed Dasker's bucket on the table. He wanted us all to be here at this very moment. Dubok smiled as he poured himself another drink.